in the host interface.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Our phones are open. You can give us a call at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also send us a text message. Leave us a voicemail at any time, and we might respond to it on the next program. You can also leave a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. We've got a bunch of stuff to talk about today. But first, I want to make sure that everybody remembers the letter carriers food drive that's happening today. So, folks, you'll remember I told you last week that every second Saturday in May is the Letter Carriers Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. And so all you got to do to participate is find or purchase some non-perishable food items, put them in a grocery bag, and take them to your mailbox. Put the donations in, beside, under your mailbox, and your letter carrier, no matter where you are, all across the country, will pick up that donation, and then they'll collect them all in a central location in your municipality or your region, and donate it to the local food bank here in North Alabama. It's going to be the Food Bank of North Alabama. If you would like to help, you can. I talked to the Letter Carriers Union yesterday, and they said that that there would be value in people coming to the Maston Lake post office at 3:00 to help unload the donations. Because they're going to be getting a lot of donations. So if you're somebody who would be interested in helping unload donations and load them back up from the letter carriers as they're finishing their route, or as they're dropping it off during their route, you can go to Maston Lake Post Office, 3:00. Ask for Cordell, and he'll point you where you need to go. You'll see me. I'll probably be there. I'll be getting there at about 3:30, so should be fun. So make sure you go out and do that. Letter Carrier Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. Put your bag out by your mailbox this morning. Rob Kelly in the chat said that he's already done it. I've already done it.
That's great.
So you should do that. Yeah, there you go. Adam, how do?
Well, I'm here. It's been a long week. It's been a difficult week for me personally, but I'm definitely here. And lots to talk about today. Lots been happening here in Alabama and, across the country.
We're going to be getting on State Representative Neil Rafferty from Birmingham here shortly to talk about the new maps for Alabama's congressional delegation. It's obviously terrible. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Adam, you've got some stuff that you wanted to say about it, and I have some comments as well, but I'm curious about your thoughts first.
Yeah, well, beyond just thinking about the maps, the redistricting, I wanted to kind of reflect on our last statewide election in 2022, because over 62% of eligible voters did not participate. And that is a statistic that has really just stuck with me, and I share it all the time. I've probably talked about it on the show before. I know I share it anytime I'm engaging with the community, and it always catches people's eyes and really sticks with other people, because over 62% of eligible voters did not participate in 2022 elections, right? That was the entire state legislature, the governor, etc. So if you remember, Governor Kay Ivey, she won her reelection in a landslide. She more than doubled the Democratic opposition's votes. I believe it was around 67% was her percentage of the vote. So she did pretty well, right? But when you zoom out, despite that landslide on one level, only 1 in 4 Alabama voters actually cast a ballot for her. So there's a lot of reasons behind that, a lot of blame to go around for that. But for me, I try to be cautiously optimistic about it because I think that tells us there's a lot of potential. If we can organize the poor and working class majority, who are very clearly the majority, right? We are the majority. Most of us are working class. We got a lot of poor folks in Alabama, a lot of working class folks who are just, just a step above poor. We are the majority. And there's a lot of potential if we organize as a voter bloc. And, we talk a lot about labor organizing on this show. We do not focus on electoral politics very often. We try to focus on building people power broadly, right? And not just at the ballot box, but, particularly in the workplace. So, honestly, I don't think that voting alone can save us or will save us. But voting is a really important tool in our toolbox. There is a reason that some powerful folks want to suppress voting power. There's a reason folks have fought and died for the right to vote. Our electoral system is super flawed. It's dominated by big money. But as we organize ourselves as a class, as a majority, we have the potential to turn out these disengaged folks and exercise more influence. Because poor and working people, particularly here in the South, particularly in states like Alabama, but I know our brothers and sisters in Tennessee and across the South are dealing with similar struggles. We just deserve way better representation than what we're getting. And it's going to be really up to us to organize to win that. So I just wanted to reflect on that because a lot of times people write off the South. They write off states like Alabama. They assume that it is this right-wing monolith. They assume that a lot of folks are unreachable. And I just want to push back on that because if the vast majority of folks are not even engaged in the process, I'm not saying that they're all secret progressives, like waiting to be tapped necessarily. But there's a lot of potential to reach folks. And again, there are a lot of reasons why so many are not participating. There are a lot of structural barriers. There's a lot of history. Our state has relied on this participation gap for a really long time. It's been intentional. It's been by design. But I just can't help but think there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity for poor and working folks to work together across racial divisions, religious divisions, other things that they want us focused on. They want us focusing on what makes us different and not how we are so much alike and how we have so much in common and we have a lot of shared interests. Because most people are not getting a fair deal here in Alabama and across the South. And much of the country is now experiencing what the South has long experienced. They're dealing with a government in D.C. that is very much in the spirit of many governments we've dealt with down here. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that out, Jacob.
Yeah. I don't think that Neil Rafferty is in the Zoom yet, right? So, the thing about the gerrymandering stuff that's really frustrating is I feel like, I mean, it's just such a blatant power grab, right? Because we should all be able to agree that in an ideal world, all else being equal, gerrymandering is bad, right? I mean,
we are supposed to pick the representatives, not the representatives pick the voters.
Exactly. And if we can agree that gerrymandering is bad in an ideal world, voters pick their representatives, not the other way around, We can also agree that the playing field that existed, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, was not an ideal world, all else being equal. Both parties had gerrymandered. Massachusetts voted 35% in favor of Donald Trump, and it was 9-0 Democrats. And Oklahoma and Arkansas also has 9 members going to the House of Representatives. Both of those states voted about 30% for 30% for Kamala Harris, 35% for Kamala Harris, and not one of those 2 states, 9 members of the House were Democrats. And so where things was not ideal, but it was in more or less a fair stalemate before Texas. And you can look, and I would encourage people to go and look at the 2022, 2024, the 2020 House of Representatives elections. You can find the popular vote, and you can find the percentage of representatives from each party in the House. And they're about what you would expect. I mean, within 1 percentage point of what you would expect. And so we were at more or less a fair stalemate. You had districts across the country that were gerrymandered, but we were at more or less a fair stalemate when Donald Trump began to look at the polls and see how unpopular all of his actions have been and how much he is being rejected by the country, and wanted to try to make it easier for his party to retain the House, not by doing things for his constituents, not by doing things for the country, not by making the lives of working people better, safer, more prosperous, not by protecting us from the billionaire oligarchs who are exploiting this country, not by doing anything like that, but by just drawing the maps in a way that gets more Republicans. And so in a case like that, it is very obvious that Democrats are going to have to retaliate. You can't expect Republicans, which is, I think, what they did expect. I think they expected that Democrats to just allow Republicans to redistrict and not retaliate. Well, Democrats did retaliate, and then, as if that was a justification, they do all this across the South, eliminating black political power. And it's just not right. And it's the frustrating thing is that I'm really not even seeing any attempt to justify it on moral, righteous, ideological grounds. At least the Democrats can say, look, we had to do this. We don't want to do this. And in fact, you can tell that we didn't want to do this because we had in these other states independent commissions. We had these things to try to make fairer maps before, particularly in Virginia. But because we are in, a bad time, this is something that we have to do. And they're not even permanent. That's the crazier thing, is that the California and the Virginia maps aren't even permanent. They revert back in 2030, I believe. And so, at least the Democrats say, like, we're responding to something. The Republicans had no excuse in Texas, and they have no excuse in the South, because with the Virginia gerrymander, they were basically even before Alabama, Tennessee, and Louisiana, Democrats had basically kind of made things even. Republicans had a slight edge by 2 or 3 seats, but that was it. And so there is no justification for the Alabama gerrymander, the Louisiana gerrymander, the Tennessee gerrymander. No justification for any of it other than I'm a Republican, so I want more Republicans to be elected. And I don't care to represent Democrats, and I don't care for Democrats to be represented. It's totally, just, naked. We've got State Representative Neil Rafferty on, and that's one of the things that I wanted to talk to him about is, how are they justifying it? But Neil Rafferty, welcome to the program. I appreciate you taking the time.
Hey, happy to be here.
So can you talk to us about what exactly the bill that was passed during the special session does?
Right. So there was two bills that came before special session. There's HB1, which began in the House, and there was SB1 that began in the Senate. HB1 was carried by Representative Chris Pringle of Mobile, and SB1 was carried by Senator Chris Elliott of Baldwin County. They both do two different things, but still kind of trying to accomplish the same objective. As soon as the Louisiana versus Calais case came down, what we saw is the special session was called into effect by the governor. And what it was is that if we were in the case that the state of Alabama was allowed to get a stay on or an injunction lifted on our maps from 2023, that we would then go back to those maps that were drawn by the Republicans in the legislature, as opposed to the three-judge panel, which said that it was a clear a violation of the 14th Amendment and a Section 2 voting rights amendment offense with those original maps. So all that means is that Alabama is going to try to pursue getting the injunction on the current maps lifted, so that we would automatically then have special primaries for the that would be more in line with the maps that were originally voted into law, that both took away Black voting power in both districts 2 and 7. SB1, all that did was just mess with Senate districts, particularly a Senate district that we're focusing on in Montgomery. So,
and did both of those passed?
Say what?
And both of those passed?
Both of those passed, yes. As far as I know that SB1 passed the House. We signed it, passed it after that cloture motion. They shut down debate. And just quickly kind of ran that one through. And HB1, same situation upstairs in the Senate. They've both been signed into law, as far as I know.
There's been some developments since the session, and if I'm reading it right, the three-judge panel that required the second Black Opportunity District to be drawn, where Shamari Figures now represents, they enjoined the legislature from this action, meaning that if this three-judge panel ruling stands, then there won't be anything new happen in 2026. The seats will stay like they are. The lines will stay like they are for the House of Representatives in 2026. Is that right? And if yes, what is their justification for that?
So the next thing is that, as many of you are probably listening on the news yesterday, is that the judge denied the motion yesterday, the federal judge. So they're now appealing to the Supreme Court directly for to lift that injunction. So that's their next step. But we've had one victory so far. But the whole idea was that Alabama's maps were so badly drawn, and there was such bad faith effort by the maps back in 2023 that the judge said that we couldn't even come back. The state of Alabama had to even agree that we wouldn't even come back to trying to draw maps or try to redraw districts until 2030. So that's already part of that original court order. And plus the Louisiana Calais case, it said very specifically that that this doesn't touch the Allegan versus Milligan case, which is the case that has enjoined Alabama to use the maps of the three-judge panel.
And so, that, I guess, do you have, because I noticed that in the ruling at the Supreme Court that the majority said that this does not overturn Milligan, which is kind of surprising. And if that is the case, then is there really as much, do you anticipate the Supreme Court allowing so much redistricting across the South to happen, or do you see the Supreme Court saying that, no, Republicans in the South are misinterpreting this ruling, and we're not going to allow these new districts to be drawn?
Well, my understanding with Tennessee particularly is that that's already been allowed and that's already been justified. So Tennessee has already gotten rid of its one majority black congressional district. Um, I do not know what we're going to see the outcome of the courts be here. I know that they were unsuccessful in that initial appeal. That's now going to the Supreme Court. We're all just kind of sitting here waiting to see what that's going to look like. There's a lot of speculation I could do as far as the
Right.
politicization. Despite John Roberts' kind of lament about the politicization of the Supreme Court, and particularly running it side by side with what's happening in Virginia. So maybe there's not the same kind of urgency that's being pushed on them that would have been pushed on them before. So we're just kind of waiting to see. We're just kind of waiting to see. But all these bills did. I just want, everyone needs to understand that the primary is still May 19th, right? It's still scheduled
Right.
for May 19th. And in the case that this is lifted, then there would be special primaries for just those races, just as affected districts, for just those candidates for Congress, and that the governor would call into effect. So,
Right. I was talking earlier about how this really is just a naked partisan power grab. I mean, I've not really seen any attempt to justify this on,
right.
moral or virtue grounds. And you have been in the state house for a number of years now, and you have to sort of by necessity cultivate relationships with people across the aisle. And so I'm curious, how do they, given the fact that, prior to Texas, things in the U.S. House of Representatives were basically fair, which is not to say that there weren't gerrymanders on either side before Texas, but that the gerrymanders basically canceled each other out. And post Texas, they had basically kind of canceled each other out, with Republicans actually still having an edge even before Tennessee, Alabama, Louisiana. And so, given the fact that with gerrymandering prior to this and even right before this, during these gerrymandering wars, Republicans had a slight edge. How do they justify? Like, what do they say?
Well, so I mean, if you were listening to the bill sponsored on the floor, they didn't really have much of a justification at all. They would just say that these are the maps that the people that the legislature voted into place. You can tell that they were very skilled. They were coached up. They were ready to go. They knew that this would be going into court proceedings, and everything that they said, that everything that we said would end up going into the court record, which we ended up putting in our official dissents that we published for the Journal, which then also were part of the case, to battle and go back and forth with as this advances in the courts.
Right.
So I didn't, not a single Republican. So the whole 5 days. Okay, the whole 5 days that we were in the special session, because it takes 5 days to get a bill through. You never heard from any of the other Republicans. They never came up. Great, they think this bill is, or why. All you ever heard from was the sponsors on this bill. There wasn't much buzz going on, with your call. There wasn't much discussion as far as what the justification was, why we were here. But at the end of the day, it is about diluting Black voting power, that the VRA was seeking to correct back in 1965. And so they're trying to take us back to an era where we didn't have to have any accountability to a quarter, or more than a quarter of the state of Alabama. And it's pretty scary stuff, because
Yeah.
if they don't have power, then you can see that if you don't have political power, then you can see that you also have economic disenfranchisement as well,
Right.
social disenfranchisement as well. There's a whole lot of other potential consequences that could come out of this without ensuring that Black voters don't have an opportunity zone where they can elect a candidate of their choice, where there's somebody who would be accountable to them.
Right.
And I think we're in real danger here, of seeing this, real a real derelict, a dereliction of duty to the people of the state of Alabama.
Yes, yeah, it's very, very concerning. Not to mention the, just the difficulty in my mind of of kind of believing the Supreme Court's justification, given the fact that, the thing that they're attacking here, the ability to draw districts with a specific eye to minority groups to ensure that they have representation. I mean, that was something that was put into the VRA after it was passed, like in the 80s, because even after the Voting Rights Act, there were only like 17 black folks in Congress. And so they said, well, look, even though kind of on its face, there are facially, racially neutral districts, these communities are still being disenfranchised by the way that the districts are being drawn. There's a disparate impact here. And so we want to put something in the law to specifically address that and make sure that these communities have the opportunity to send people of their choice to Congress. And after that was passed and redistricting happened in the 90s, then black representation in Congress more than doubled pretty immediately.
Right.
And so, you could really see not only, a decimation, yes, of black representation in Congress, but more relevantly, a decimation of minority communities' ability to send a representative of their choosing to Congress, right? Because people are kind of trying to dunk on the idea that the Tennessee map in particular is taking away Memphis, black people in Memphis, their ability to send a representative of their choosing, because the representative of their choosing for the last 20 years has been white, as if that's a rebuttal to, that is who the black community in Memphis decided they wanted to send. And now they're not going to have the opportunity to send him, right? I mean, that's
Right.
the whole deal.
Right. The whole idea is to make sure that they have somebody that would be accountable to them. The only way to do that is by giving them the voting power to be able to vote that person in and out of office, regardless of what that person looks like. As long as they have the majority and the ability to vote their person of choice, somebody that would be accountable to them, within that district.
So, Representative Rafferty, as we're coming up on the end of the hour, we're going to be going into a break momentarily. I'm cognizant of the fact that we have, lots of conservative listeners. One of the stations that we're on here in Alabama is a conservative station. And so if I'm a conservative voter, why should I be upset about, black folks being their political power being taken away in the state of Alabama? Because ultimately, and I do think that really, in most of these people's minds, it's not, I want to disenfranchise black folks. It's, I want to disenfranchise liberals and Democrats. And if liberal and Democrats are disenfranchised, then that makes Alabama better in the mind of a conservative voter. Why should I care if I'm that person?
I would say, I think that the biggest thing here is just looking at the bigger picture here. What is democracy? What is fair? What is a fair election? And a fair election cannot happen without fair maps. So with overall, it's all about making sure that there's fairness. And if, you understand that, this is an issue, and if this is the extreme lengths that are willing to take to make sure that minority voters don't have representation, then, what's the next step that they could take from here? So it doesn't stop here, and I don't see that it would stop here. That's why we have to fight back now.
In 30 seconds, how are the House and Senate Democrats planning to respond in Alabama?
So we responded with robust debate on the floor. We responded with, building up a legal case with our points that we brought to the floor and that we brought to committee. All those things were then formalized into official dissents, which were published into the House Journal. And at this point, it's anticipating, what we're going to do next is really going to be in response to what we end up seeing with the Supreme Court.
State Representative Neil Rafferty of Birmingham, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report. If you want to call in, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. We're going to be talking to a Durham, North Carolina educator about building a strong teachers union in the South. Really excited for that conversation, folks, so stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I said no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama, this is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We just wrapped up a conversation with Alabama State Representative Neil Rafferty about redistricting in the state. Today, we will be talking to a Durham educator about building a strong teachers union in the South and more, so make sure you stay tuned. If you'd like to call in, you can do so at 844-899-8857. That is 844-899-TVLR. You can also send us a text message to the same number. You can leave us a voicemail at the same number at any time, or send us a note at tvlr.fm/contact. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, tvlr.fm. But we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at The Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. A huge portion of our funding comes directly from our listeners, so if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report or tvlr.fm/donate. We got a bunch of cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, then you should get your local, district, region, or international to sponsor the show, and you can reach out to us for more details on that.
Hey y'all, let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. And we want to welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, WMSP, WCPT, KTNF, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. And we are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out at laborradionetwork.org. As most of you know, we are not media professionals, just a few diehard unionists who want to amplify the voices of the working class, especially here in the American South. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us.
And we appreciate everybody hanging out with us in our YouTube chat. A dancing piece of bread says, greetings from Florida. Union Gus says, just use the break to put out food for my letter carrier. And Osiniad says with a $1.99 super chat, don't forget to leave those bags out for the carriers. And that is a reminder to everybody listening. Today is the second Saturday in May, which means that it is the annual Stamp Out Hunger food drive that the letter carriers unions, in conjunction with the post office and the other two major postal unions, do to donate food to the local food banks. And the way that it works is that postal customers put non-perishable food items in a grocery bag beside, below, on top of, inside of your mailbox, and your letter carrier collects it. And then they take it to their central, wherever they are, their post office, and then from there they donate it to the local food bank. Last year, I believe, nationwide, they collected 73 million pounds of food. So let's try to get those numbers up this year. Everybody, if your letter carrier has not come yet, then make sure you go out, put your non-perishable food item beside your mailbox, inside of your mailbox, wherever, so that your letter carrier can collect it. If your letter carrier has already come, then you can take it directly to the post office. So make sure you do that. Stamp Out Hunger and all of those good things. Ben in the chat says, just got my donation bag out too. Big ups to letter carriers for literally carrying the weight today. Indeed. Gerald says, mine is there. Rob says, put my bag out at the mailbox this morning. Journey, let's see. Yeah, so there you go. Union Gus says, also heading downtown to hang out with the teachers here in Portland this afternoon who are part of a tax Nike / anti-sweatshop organizing event. Very exciting. Yeah, looking forward to this conversation with the Durham educator. And and before we get into last week in Southern Labor, also wanted to share that State Representative Neil Rafferty texted me and said, if I could add one more rationale for why other people should care about fair representation, even if you are not in the quote-unquote affected group. So if you are in Alabama or Tennessee and you're a conservative voter who is watching their more liberal, their more democratic, and to be frank, their black neighbors being disenfranchised, why should you care about that? Because your political voice is being made stronger. Well, he said, if I could add one more rationale to that, it's that representation is how people are supposed to be able to get their grievances addressed. So disenfranchisement or non-responsive representation leads these grievances to build up and has the potential for social and economic turmoil and political upheaval that democracy is supposed to be able to prevent. So
I really like that.
Also,
I appreciate that.
Also a good argument. Let's get into last week in Southern Labor. Every week in the South, workers organize new unions. They bargain for new contracts. They fight for good legislation and against bad legislation, and they put the boss in their place. This is some of the stories that we could find from May the 1st to May 8th. This is last week in Southern Labor. Over the last week, 1,183 workers in 10 bargaining units have gone public with their union campaigns. 51 workers in one bargaining unit are trying to decertify their union. 39 workers across 3 bargaining units withdrew their petition for a union election. 27 workers across 5 bargaining units unionized, and 121 workers across 2 bargaining units voted against unionization. Here are some of the details in new campaigns. The employer filed a petition to hold a union election after a majority of the 19 workers at Tyson Foods in Hope, Arkansas, demonstrated support for unionization with the United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW Local 2008. 100 workers at Arkwood Environmental in Carthage, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAMAW. 800 workers at House of Rayford Farms in Vienna, Georgia, filed a petition to hold a union election with UFCW Local 1996. 96 workers at Did Lake Incorporated in Virginia Beach, Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Public Service Employees Union Local 572. 64 workers at Southern Ready Mix in Locust Grove, Georgia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters Local 528. In election results, 52 workers at Olin Winchester in Independence, Missouri, voted 16-30 against unionization with the IAMAW. Workers at Olin Winchester, who are already organized with the IAMAW, just ratified a new contract and ended a 4-week-long strike. 69 workers at TCL Specialties in Proctor, West Virginia, voted 32-34 against unionization with the United Steelworkers, USW. 11 workers at Legacy Supply Chain in Bowling Green, Kentucky, voted 8-0 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters, Local 89. 5 workers at Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C., voted 3-0 in favor of unionization with the District of Columbia Nurses Association. And 4 workers at MEMC in St. Peters, Missouri, voted 4-0 in favor of unionization with the IAMAW District 9. In strikes and bargaining updates, teachers make 27% less than similarly educated professionals. That's according to a new study from the National Education Association, the largest teachers union in the country. In real wages, teachers make 5% less than they did a decade ago. Education support professionals fared even worse, making 9% less than they did 10 years ago. Something that will not be surprising to listeners of this program, though, is that teachers in states with collective bargaining are able to almost reach parity with similarly educated professionals, making on average 24% more than their counterparts in states that bar public sector collective bargaining. Education support professionals in states with collective bargaining make 13% more than their counterparts in non-collective bargaining states. 600 New Orleans nurses just ended a strike that began on May the 1st. The 5-day action came in protest of the University Medical Center New Orleans' 2-year-long record of bad faith and intentionally slow-walking negotiations. Workers at UMC voted overwhelmingly in December of 2023 to unionize and have been bargaining with the hospital since March of 2024. In political and legislative updates, after the Supreme Court essentially struck down the Voting Rights Act, Southern states began scrambling to decimate black political power. In particular, we're seeing action from Florida, where they already approved new maps, in Tennessee, where they also already approved new maps, in Alabama, where they approved new maps, although a court has struck them down, and Louisiana, where the state is postponing primaries to allow the drawing of new maps. Action in Mississippi would be more difficult, though the president is pushing for it because they've already had their primary elections. Georgia said they won't redistrict for these midterms, but might ahead of 2028. South Carolina is a maybe. Labor federations from most of these states have put out statements condemning the Republican power grabs. Alabama, Louisiana, Florida, and Tennessee. The Alabama AFL-CIO president, Bren Riley, put it well, saying, "Any trade unionist can tell you that what is decided in Washington, D.C. and in our state legislature has a direct impact on what we can win at the bargaining table. When voting maps are redrawn to suppress the voices of our black and brown brothers and sisters, all workers suffer because these efforts only give power-hungry billionaires more leverage to dismantle our labor rights." If we missed anything, let us know at tvlr.fm/contact and subscribe to the newsletter where you will get the exhaustive version of Last Week in Southern Labor in your email inbox every single week. We have in the Zoom Micah Twietmeyer, the president of the Durham Association of Educators. Micah, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Been looking forward to this conversation for a minute now. Folks who listen to the program regularly will probably recognize the name, the Durham Association of Educators or the North Carolina Association of Educators, because your union shows up so often in Last Week in Southern Labor because you do so many cool things. And we're going to talk to you about some of those cool things. But before that, can you tell us what made you want to be a leader and an active participant in your union as opposed to somebody who just kind of pays dues, maybe goes to meetings, but doesn't really participate?
Yeah, sure. This is my 18th year in Durham Public Schools. I've been a union member all of those 18 years, and I really started becoming more involved when we did start the shift from a service organization to more of an organizing, campaign-based organization, and we started not only advocating for things, but winning things for a broader base of our members and our community.
So, North Carolina has some of the most vehemently anti-union politicians and businesses in the country, along with one of the lowest union density rates. And I'm curious about what it's like being a unionist in a climate as hostile as that one. And not only that, but being a unionist that's fighting to build, as you said, an organizing, a fighting union rather than a service union, and in the public sector, no less. I mean, there's a lot of headwinds and a lot of people who are opponents of the kind of unionism that you are a proponent of. And so I'm curious what that's like.
It's tough. I mean, it's definitely tough, not only for the reasons that you mentioned, like politicians and electeds and the laws against what we're trying to do, but also amongst just potential members and folks. Right, union is kind of a scary word in North Carolina and the South at times. But that being said, it's extremely exciting to be building fighting organizations, across North Carolina, here in Durham and beyond. And just, hearing a little bit about the votes that you were announcing. A week and a half ago, Forsyth County, hit majority with over 3,000 union members. And if we were in an NLRB state, I mean, that would be front page everywhere.
Right.
So really, like, the context in the South is we're doing things for the first time, we're expanding what's possible, and we're really actually calling the questions to some of our allies. Like here in Durham, a traditionally progressive blue area in North Carolina, when we started fighting for union rights and our meet and confer policy, which we won last year, lots of our allies and those that claim they're, pro public schools, pro worker, really had to struggle with what that meant, and they really showed their cards.
Yeah, I mean, Adam, I'm sure that you're not familiar with this, but Adam came out of the teachers and the teachers union in the state of Alabama, and so and being in Huntsville, it's obviously not a progressive city, but there are some progressive elements and some people who want to consider themselves kind of pro public schools, and so having to deal with sometimes even allies, I'm sure is something that Adam can relate to.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll just chime in here to say what an inspiration y'all have been to someone like me who started as an educator and became active really because I saw that there were so many issues facing our students, facing, myself as a young teacher, but also my colleagues across the different professions in the schools. And, I was just wondering, like, who's going to do something? Who's going to say something? And I just felt that itch, like, I have to say something. I have to be involved. I have to get active. And I drew a lot of inspiration from the Chicago Teachers Union that went on strike in 2012, which was the same year I started teaching. And I just really want to applaud what's happening in North Carolina and in Durham specifically, because in many ways, y'all are fighting in tougher conditions than we have in Alabama, right? We've had meet and confer for a long time. We've had some degree of right to representation for public school employees. So we've had some elements, we still have some due process rights in terms of tenure protections. So, the willingness to experiment and, like you said, try new things. In some cases, you're trying things for the first time. I think that is really an inspiration for educators, particularly here in the South, where a lot of folks are fearful, or a lot of folks, have been kind of conditioned to think that this is as good as it's going to get, right? And there's just nothing we can really do about it. And so, yeah, I just want to take that moment of personal privilege to really thank you and thank all of the members in your local and across North Carolina for, blazing new trails.
Thank you so much. It's exciting. And like you said, a lot of us were inspired by the Chicago strikes in 2012 and, seeing what's possible, especially when families and the community and everybody comes together. DAE and NCAE, we're wall to wall in the public schools, which is a really awesome opportunity for workers across, categories, ESPs, classified, certified educators, everybody to come together to fight for what our students need.
You mentioned that one of the obstacles that an organization like yours faces in a place like you're in is not only the businesses and the politicians and the laws, but also there's a cultural sort of an impediment in that there are lots of conservative teachers, right, who immediately have, who don't see the union as something for them or something that they can be a part of, or see unions, quote unquote, as something that is inherently, liberal or not, or something that conservative people can't be a part of. But you just told us that you reached majority membership in Forsyth County, North Carolina, and you don't do that without having a significant number of conservative teachers. And so how are y'all reaching conservative teachers and showing them that, maybe my politics are different than yours, potentially, but ultimately our organization exists for the benefit of teachers, and it's something that all teachers in North Carolina and in Durham and in Winston-Salem and Forsyth County should be a part of?
Right. I mean, I think the big thing is talking to everybody, as many people, right? And everybody deserves to be asked and invited into the union. That's our stance, right? And you're right. It's definitely like the stigma of this is a leftist, liberal, democratic, always, organization. And I think that's, just part of that narrative that's out there. But when you start talking to people about the issues, you start talking about how is it going in their classroom? How is it going on their school bus, in the cafeteria? Do your students have everything they need? And then you start asking, like, well, what is it going to take to change these conditions that we're in? And people understand it's going to take the majority of workers coming together, demanding better working conditions, better learning conditions. And that crosses, party lines, crosses, all the lines that they try to draw between us to union bust, right? And, of course, not everybody is convinced. And I think it's going to take examples, right? Like Durham hit majority, Asheville hit majority, Edgecombe County, which is a smaller rural county, hit majority, Winston-Salem, right? So we need these examples to show that it's going to work for more folks to get involved.
And so, despite that hostile climate from all sorts of different places, the Durham Association of Educators has really, as we've been saying, built itself into a really powerful organization. Can you talk about some of the accomplishments that your union has had over the last few years, some of the exciting actions that y'all participated in, and some of your solidarity with the community?
Yeah, definitely. Some highlights, from 2024 were battling back against a financial debacle that our district was in, a big crisis, and they were attempting to claw back wages from workers. They had miscalculated how much some pay increases would cost, and in January sent classified staff an email saying, oops, we can no longer pay you at this rate. You're going back to last year's pay starting now. And you also have to pay us back some of the money. So obviously that was, a pivotal moment in not only, solidarity across, working groups in Durham Public Schools in our union. And so to prevent that from immediately happening in our district, we organized some rolling sick outs at schools. We had 2 rounds, every week, some schools shutting down, some other schools shutting down, and we were prepped to do a 3rd round before our demands were met to not claw back the money and to prevent the salary change for 3 months, which was really huge. And that was only possible because we have been growing and we have been building our structure. And in those schools that we're able to have enough workers call in sick to stop school for the day. It took leaders in the buildings talking to everybody, getting to a super majority of folks to say yes to that action. So that was something that was really, really big. And about that same time, we presented to our school board our meet and confer draft policy, which, as you all know, in a state where we can't bargain a contract, is the closest public sector workers can get to negotiating students' conditions and working conditions and policies. And that took us over a year, but we finally won that policy last May. And this year we participated in 7 public negotiations with district leadership. They were open to the public, big room, live streamed, and we had the union negotiation team was 13 folks that were elected by union members to represent them across work sectors and different work categories. And out of our first meet and confer season, we have 2 joint policies that are in the works to go to the board. One around budget transparency, which has been a big, #1 issue, especially after this huge pay crisis a couple years ago, and a revision to our grievance policy, right now it's really tough to file a group grievance, and you're not guaranteed representation if you submit a grievance. Both your supervisor has to agree right now for you to bring any type of representation to a grievance hearing, which is, union busting 101.
Right.
So yeah, and I think maybe we'll talk a little bit too about really making sure that the folks that are in control of our working conditions, like our elected school board, are folks that are union aligned. And in March, we swept the school board and got a slate elected, including voting out the current board chair incumbent.
I mean, that's all so, there's so much to talk about there, and it's all so cool to be able to do this again in the place that you're in. And I want to talk, I guess, first about, you mentioned the rolling sickouts as a way to put pressure on the administration. And so I'm curious how you were able to how did you build the support for engaging in that action? Because obviously that's risky, because that's like technically not allowed, right? Like, you're not supposed to do that. And so how were you able to build up support for that action and build up enough power upon taking that action that the teachers who engaged in that did not see any adverse employment actions?
Right. I mean, that is, obviously something that it takes talking to everybody in the building who's going to take those actions, right? It didn't work, based on our structure and the buildings. We have about 60 work sites in Durham Public Schools. So obviously we knew that there were certain work sites that had, higher union density and had strong leadership, where in the span of a couple of days, their team could check in with every worker and explain the context. Not a lot of people knew exactly what was happening to their classified colleagues. And when you just explained that they were going to start making hundreds or thousands of dollars less a month and they need to pay back this money, it was just like the issue was so outstanding that it was hard not to get folks to want to participate. And I think one thing, in 2018 and 2019, North Carolina did some really large actions similar to what just happened on May Day. And there was this memory of, when we do things together, it's harder for individuals to be targeted, right? And that's the whole thing about joining a union too, right? It's our power in our numbers, right? Like, if my whole school is going to shut down, is my district going to come and punish all of us for something where we're just standing in solidarity with our classified workers, saying, please don't punish them because of the financial mistake you made, right? Like, the common sense is just there that needs to happen. And that's the only leverage that we had in that moment, and people understood, right? The school board was having, public meetings, and classified workers were saying, like, we just moved and have like different rent at this place. And, I finally like quit my second job because I was now making enough money, and you're taking this back. And, the school board was like, we're sorry, we messed up, right? But, those types of mistakes don't go without consequences.
Right. You also mentioned that y'all were able to sweep the school board elections in Durham. Can you talk about how you did that, and what were the platforms of the school board candidates that you endorsed, and what changes are you hoping to see in the schools? Importantly, I think not just for the teachers, but also for the students. How are these school board candidates that y'all were supporting hoping to increase the quality of public education in Durham?
Right. And I will just say, remember, we're not just teachers, we're everybody. We're at wall to wall, everybody in Durham Public Schools. So I just like to note that. So really how we started thinking about this year's school board election, which was in March. It's a primary, but it's actually the election for our school board, is thinking about what's important to us as workers and for our students in our community, and making sure that we identify folks, in the community from our base, from our supporters, who will uphold those values, right? So we worked with another group in Durham for All. They're part of the Carolina Federation. They do a lot of parent organizing and align our goals and values with them, and they're a big partner on some other projects we do in Durham. And so we really started looking in the community, right? We started looking for people that weren't necessarily putting their name in to run for school board, but who are the folks who have been supporting us, who we've had conversations with, who know the community, and identifying them and having conversations, right? And what we were looking for, one of the things, like I said, it was over a year to get this meet and confer policy, right? It was tough to get a majority of our current school board members to vote in favor of meet and confer, including some folks who are retired educators that serve on the board, right? So we were looking for folks that were going to be pro meet and confer, right? They were going to really want to seek community input and make sure that they were being accountable to the community, and who are interested in, a co-governance model, right? All of us have done this before. We've endorsed candidates, gotten them elected, and then it hasn't gone the way we thought it was going to go, right? And the board chair on our current school board, is someone that in the past the union has endorsed, and we were just looking for folks who were going to be clear about their decisions and clear with the community, clear with the union, and being willing to engage.
Right.
That's also cool. I mean, it's just so much cooler than some of the things that happen in Alabama. So I mean, it's just so exciting to be able to hear about all of this. And this is all sort of contingent on having a strong union, a strong organizing union versus a union that is more interested in service. And you mentioned the shift in North Carolina among the educators union, the school workers union, and recently a slate of educators running for state leadership under the name Majority Strong one as well. And so I'm wondering if you could talk to us about that slate, what people can expect from the North Carolina Association of Educators and the Durham Association of Educators moving forward, and maybe you can also speak a little bit about the difference between like a service model versus like an organizing model for a teachers union.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think when we talk about generally like a service model, it's more like, you pay your dues. It's like a soda machine, we say, right? Like you pay your dues and you get like a soda out, right? So like, what is the union doing for individual members, for example? And when we think about an organizing, fighting, campaign-driven organization, we think about like having majorities of workers involved in campaigns or actions to really make change, and being more active and just like more visible, I would say. And I'm not saying that there isn't still a need for services from a union, right? Like for individuals, there's definitely that. But, in DAE and the way we're moving with NCAE, that's been a big shift. Because we need to change conditions for our students and our schools, like on a big scale. And that's going to take like folks being active and people not just paying dues and sitting back and waiting for someone to do work for them to advocate on their behalf, right? So we did have a new caucus in our statewide organization spring up. I'm a member of that caucus. And what, the goals of the caucus are to really start looking, it's called the Majority Strong Caucus, and there's leaders from all across the state in the caucus, but also from these locals like Durham who have worked on ambitious majority campaigns, have worked on meet and confer campaigns, are really, testing things out like we were talking about before in the South, and seeing what's working and what's not working, and what we can do to try to get as many folks active in all. There's 100 counties in North Carolina, all the counties, right? So the goals of the caucus were to start influencing the state level leadership. There's a state board. There's obviously, governance at the state level. And since our recent leadership, Tamika Walker Kelly as president and Brian Proffitt as vice president, when they took office, they did a lot of the beginnings of that transformation from service to organizing. And now, we've learned a lot, and we wanted to, as they're coming to the end of their cycle, we wanted to identify and put forth folks in union leadership at the state level that align with organizing, continuing to move away from that service model to more of an organizing model, and really, mobilizing folks across the state to make the changes that that our schools need for us to survive, right? It's not, the 18 years I've been in public schools in North Carolina, conditions have not been getting better. So it's a time to try different tactics. And, like I said, in the South, we're really pushing what unions can do and making things a reality that I didn't think was possible 18 years ago. When I joined, I did not think that one day DAE would be majority, negotiating with our bosses, developing policies for better grievance policies, so really pushing what's possible. So I think, what members can expect from state leadership is still, that focus on what's the future of NCAE going to be, and what does it need to be to actually make the changes that we all know need to happen, right? We can't just sit back. And that means being really sharp and being super involved in pivotal elections across the state, right? We've been, in Durham, for example, that school board election I was talking about, we drove higher voter turnout than during the presidential primary.
Wow.
Which is huge, right?
Wow.
So, I mean, that's just what's possible. I think someone wrote it was like the number of votes that got AOC voted in, right? Like it's a lot,
Wow.
With a majority of workers doing these things, right? Things are possible. And that's what we want members across North Carolina to see. We say it's not magic, it's organizing. It does take work. It does take investment. It does take us getting more members. And it does require us trying things to see if they're going to work, and maybe not knowing if they're going to work in that moment.
Yeah, this has been an amazing conversation. And again, I just really am so grateful for the work that y'all are doing. And my last question would be, if a rank and file educator is out here listening to this, especially one who is in what we might call a professional association and not really a fighting union like you're describing, what words of encouragement do you have for them? And what would you suggest on their path to get started?
Yeah, I would just say it's all about the rank and file leaders and members, right? None of this would be happening in Durham and across the state if rank and file members weren't becoming involved and asking to be part of the decision making. Another big transformation has been like deeply rooted democracy for decision making in all these, in all aspects of what we're doing, right? And I think if that person can talk to their other members and be like, how, just ask the questions like, who's developing our strategic plan, right? Like, do we have a strategic plan? Like what, how are decisions made, right? I think just like those fundamental questions, and then be ready to. There's some internal struggle, right, in the union, right? Especially if change is going to happen, but to not be afraid of asking those questions and wanting to be involved, and basically getting your crew together who also feel similarly to start making those changes that are going to impact your students in your school. But it's all about the rank and file members, right? None of our unions are going to be successful if our rank and file members aren't actively involved and actively engaged and understand what leadership is doing.
Micah Twietmeyer is the president of the Durham Association of Educators. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and let's keep in touch.
Yeah, thanks so much.
We're going to take a break, folks. We'll be right back. The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communications system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Folks, today is the second Saturday in May, the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. If your letter carrier has not come by yet and you have some non-perishable food items, put them in a grocery bag and put them beside your mailbox or some other such thing, right? It's going to be really cool. Hopefully we'll get a bunch of pounds of food donated. Last year, there were 73 million pounds donated. It's the largest single-day food drive in the country. So hopefully we get more than 73 million pounds this year. So go ahead and do that if you haven't yet. And if your letter carrier has already come to your house, then you can take it to your post office. We have a caller on the line. This caller from a 317 area code. 317 area code, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, y'all. This is a Heartland Teamster. Can you hear me all right?
Heartland Teamster coming through loud and clear. What's on your mind?
Well, I got a Saturday off, so I thought I'd call in and talk to y'all. It's been a while since we talked last, and I wanted to touch on some things that have happened between that, last call and this one. I just want to say, all the workers out there that feel desperate, that feel like there's nobody coming to save you. The government has abandoned you. Maybe you voted for Trump because he said, I'm going to make the economy better and lower gas prices and no new wars, and then turns around and starts a war that shoots gas prices and food prices through the roof. If you're feeling desperate, if you're feeling like there's nowhere to turn inward. Turn inward and try and do something in your workplace or where you live. If you're willing, everybody who's out there willing to set a warehouse on fire, you might want to consider trying to start a union first.
Right.
Because if you're at the level where you're going to set a warehouse on fire, then you have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose but your chains, as Karl Marx said. So if you're feeling like you're gonna do something that desperate, try organizing a union first. Because if you're gonna set a warehouse on fire, then you can organize. You can you can go on an illegal strike. If you're willing to do something that illegal, then you can get out there and you can do something that unites all of us and isn't just a desperate cry in sort of this this capitalist like landscape where workers are chewed up and spit out. Because I understand it looks bleak, right? The Supreme Court has gutted the Voting Rights Act to the point where it functionally doesn't exist. But we've been here before, maybe not quite like this, but we've been here before, and brave men and women took up the fight and pushed the working class forward. And we went to sleep for a little while because things were good. Now we need to wake back up and take inspiration from those that came before us. So
I know.
Working men and women, rise up.
Heartland Teamster, I really appreciate the call. And I think, I mean, that's Adam will probably know this quote better than I would. But I mean, back in, 100, 150 years ago or something, there were a lot of anarchists got caught up in movements of like political violence and the propaganda of the deed. And my understanding of the history is that the socialists, the communists, were opposed to the anarchist political violence because there was a belief that that ultimately, and we can look at the history and kind of see what happened from the the anarchist assassinations. It's not, it was sort of self-indulgent, right? And if you're really willing to, essentially what those kinds of acts are ultimately like throwing your life away. If you're willing to do that, you should be willing to not only, die for the cause, you should be willing to live for the cause and to build something and organize and do something that will not only be more likely to make a better world, but also, I mean, it'll be better for you too. Like it is a much more pro-social activity to build a union than to, set fire to a warehouse. As much as maybe there's like a sort of animal desire for revenge and punishment and things like that, what's actually going to be more likely to produce a better world and what's going to be better for you and your coworkers? It's organizing, building a union, building a movement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
and I really appreciate the call.
Quoting, if we're quoting history, there are a few quotes that stick with me, and one of those is like, our revenge will be the laughter of our children. So get involved. If it's a union, if it's a tenants union, I think you guys should probably have LA Tenants Union on just while I'm thinking about it. Like, I understand you're a labor union show, but the struggle is holistic, and unions, they had in those days you're talking about, they had mutual aid societies, right? They had they got together. They were pro-social, and it was every aspect of their lives.
I mean, right here in Alabama, the Knights of Labor had their own community. In Powderly, Alabama, there was a community where all of the houses and I think the stores were all cooperatively owned and built and maintained and run by and for members of the Knights of Labor. I mean, and we don't even have to go as far as LA to find a really cool tenants union. We can just go a few hours up the road in Louisville, Kentucky, where tenants have just won the first collectively bargained lease in the South. And that does remind me that I need to I've had it on my list to reach out to them, get them on the show. And I'm sure that one day we will. So, Heartland Teamster, really appreciate you taking the time to call.
The working class, needs to learn how to trust itself again. And I'll end with a quote. Rise like lions after slumber, in unvanquishable number. Shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep had fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few.
Appreciate the call. Thank you so much. We've got time for one Boss Watch story, so we'll go ahead and do that. Every day across the South, workers are killed on the job, stolen from, discriminated against, or sexually harassed. Sometimes the employers are caught. These are last week's stories. This is Boss Watch. In Missouri, a U.S. Department of Labor whistleblower investigation has found that a railroad company wrongfully suspended an employee for reporting a train collision and safety concerns in violation of the Federal Railroad Safety Act. The department's Occupational Safety and Health Administration investigated a complaint filed by a Kansas City-based employee of Canadian Pacific Kansas City who reported to the Federal Railroad Administration a minor train collision that occurred at the railroad company's Noche Yard on August 11th, 2024. While the employee was not present at the time of the crash, which caused minimal damage and did not result in any injuries, the employee learned of it from a co-worker on the day it occurred and reported the collision and related safety concerns as required by law 2 days later. OSHA's investigation found that CPKC's management was aware of the incident through radio traffic and internal rumors, but took no investigative action until the employee's report triggered an inspection by the Federal Railroad Administration. In September of 2024, the employee represented other workers involved in the collision during a disciplinary hearing as their union chairman and disclosed that they reported the incident. As a result, CPKC investigated the employee and charged them with violating internal company policy for failure to notify management of the collision despite not being present for it. The employee was subsequently suspended for 20 days without pay. OSHA ordered CPKC to rescind the employee's 20-day suspension and pay all back wages plus interest. The employer was also ordered to expunge the major rules violation and all references to the disciplinary action from the employee's personnel record. CPKC must also pay compensatory and punitive damages. That's it for the Valley Labor Report this week. We got a second half of the program. Find us Facebook and YouTube, The Valley Labor Report, to continue listening. But if you don't, we appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week. All right. We're off the radio now. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back in just a moment, and we'll be talking to another North Carolina worker, this one an Amazon employee, a member of CAUSE, Carolina Amazonians United for Solidarity and Empowerment, to talk about worker deaths in the state and how the company has been responding. Stay tuned.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell. Go to Harlan County, there is no neutral there. You'll either be a union man or a thug party age player. Which side are you on? 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 Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? 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 Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell. Go to Harlan County, there is no neutral there. You'll either be a union man or a thug party age player. Which side are you on? 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 Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you
This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, now broadcasting in the North, in Minneapolis and Chicago, coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people all over the country. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, the phone number is 844-899-8857. You can also call us at the same number, send us a text message, etc. You can send us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. We have Italo Medelius on the line. He is the secretary for Cause. Italo, welcome to the program.
Jacob, my friend, good to see you.
It's great to have you. I believe have you back on the program. I think that we've had you on the show before. So we appreciate you taking the time to join us again. As people know, Amazon is an incredibly dangerous place to work. There have been reports about this from the Senate and from National Kosh, I believe, about the increased danger from working at Amazon, by the increased danger faced by workers for working at Amazon. And there are some recent individual instances in North Carolina and in Oregon that I want to talk to you about. But do you have any of those numbers and statistics like off the top of your head that you can tell us to help listeners understand just how dangerous it is to work at Amazon?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the most striking numbers come from the Strategic Organizing Center. We work very closely with the SOC. We were actually just over there with them in New York last weekend. And these are numbers back from 2024. And I know that they're updating those numbers right now, but Amazon, back in 2024, they claimed about 39% of total warehouse workers in the United States, which is already a crazy number that they in a way have so many warehouse workers in their hands across the United States. So from that 39%, 56% of all warehouse injuries in the United States come from Amazon. So they have about 40% of workers, but all warehouse injuries from Amazon claims about 56% of those. So over half of warehouse injuries come from an Amazon facility and in the United States. I think that should, set up an alarm in people's head. Why is Amazon claiming more than half of all warehouse injuries in the United States? And I know that the Senate Help Committee, they looked into this a little bit, and we're actually having a conversation with the Senate Help Committee this Tuesday with Senator Sanders' staff. And in the last investigation they did, they found that it was about speed. The speed that Amazon requires from workers is a huge contributing factor for all these injuries. And you prefaced this a little bit, but now we're also finding out about deaths, right? Deaths, people losing their lives all over Amazon facilities. And since the last time that we spoke, we keep getting more reports about more deaths across North Carolina. So this is a very dire situation. And we also know, of course, that Amazon has a history of trying to cover up injuries, and now we know that they're trying to cover up deaths. So this is not something to balk at. We got to push back against this. It's one of the largest corporate empires in the history of the world, and we can't allow this to keep on going like this.
Right. In March, one of your coworkers suffered from what eyewitnesses believed to be a stroke while on the job, and then he ultimately died later at his home. Can you talk to us about what happened? Like, can you just run us through the facts of the case? Like, what happened at when this worker is supposed to have had a stroke or some such event, and how the company reacted that day, and how they've continued to react to this situation in the months since then?
Yeah, so this incident occurred at RDU 1 in Gardner, North Carolina. And it's a facility that I used to work at, and now I'm in another facility in Durham. But this occurred earlier on in the spring, where a worker, probably in his mid 50s, I think he was 56, He was a veteran, and he was working in the fourth floor. So RDU1 is this huge warehouse, 5,000 people, 4 floors, about a mile long, and he collapsed. So we know from eyewitness testimonies that he just collapsed, and from what seemed to be either a stroke or a heart attack. It's likely that it was a stroke. And one of our members of our Hispanic organizing committee actually found him. He was the person that responded first. And he mentioned that he saw him lying on the ground and that he knew that the guy was dying in front of his eyes. We have his testimony recorded. And he was asked by management to not call 911. And that instead he needs to elevate it to security or to AmCare. AmCare, for those that don't know, is the internal sort of like medical unit, if you want to call it that, inside of Amazon, where, by the way, they also are the ones that conduct drug tests, the random drug tests that are used to union bust at times. So the worker did that, what he was instructed to do, which was to not call 911 and wait for internal procedures to happen. And we have varying reports of how long it took for AmCare to respond. The first reports that we got was that it took about 20 to 30 minutes, but then we've been getting other reports that it took upwards of up to like an hour. So we've been getting reports between 20 minutes to an hour for response time. And as we know, for a life-threatening event like a stroke, every second matters. And so this led us down a rabbit hole of trying to see, has there been a paper trail of people saying that Amazon has a culture or even procedures of preventing people from calling 911 and instead of going through internal systems? And yeah, there's a huge paper trail going all the way back to 2015. And I know that Amazon has responded to the labor force, specifically the great folks at the labor force, who have been elevating this death. Of course, also along with the death that occurred in Portland, and Amazon has denied all allegations that they have a culture and procedures of preventing people from calling 911. So I've seen these procedures with my own eyes. There's a paper trail going back to 2015. So it really is who you're going to believe. Are you going to believe Amazon spokespeople who are talking from a skyscraper in Seattle, or are you going to listen to the eyewitnesses on the ground? I think it's up to the viewer to decide who you want to believe.
Yeah, I mean, hearing that you know, I was reading the press release, and in your press release, you use a picture from some reporting on Amazon warehouses that corroborated the idea that management tells workers not to call 911 in the event of a medical emergency. And like, as far as I can tell, I thought that was illegal, that you couldn't do that. And yet, I don't know if this is the case at RDU1 or at the Durham warehouse where you work, but at least one warehouse, they were not only willing to instruct management to tell people that verbally, which, you know, that's a pretty common way to kind of get around implementing policies that are illegal, is just only have them communicated verbally. That way there's no paper trail. But there was a flyer telling people, in case of medical emergency, call security, not 911. And how do they justify that? I mean, am I incorrect that that's not illegal to do, actually, or are they just flagrantly violating the law?
Yeah, it is illegal, and it depends on the municipality, right? But at least in Durham, we have been speaking with the Durham City Council, and it is illegal to prevent Amazon or any employer to prevent their workers from calling 911, or anybody, right? It's interfering with emergency medical response. But as we know, Amazon, one of the largest corporate empires in the history of the world, they don't believe in the law. The law doesn't apply to them. That goes all the way from labor law with the NLRB. And it seems like they feel confident enough that municipal law doesn't apply to them either. And right now we are working on drafting a law, an ordinance that we can maybe begin to roll out in Durham. which would put very, very heavy fines on employers that do that commit these kinds of that have these kinds of policies, where it might not be explicitly on like a flyer or something in all warehouses, but even if you are encouraging people to not call 911, that should carry huge penalties. And we're currently working on putting stronger protections through municipal law. And for those of us that are a little bit nerdy on municipal law in the South specifically, we have very strong preemption laws, which is the state can sort of limit the power of municipalities. But this is one of the key places where municipal law does have a lot of teeth in emergency response. So we're going at them every way that we can, from organizing inside of the warehouse to make sure that the internal policies are changed. But we're also going to go through the law. We're going to find the hell out of them if we need to, and this policy will change one way or another.
One of the things that your union said that they believe led to the death of this man in March was the time delay between the incident and actually getting medical attention. And people know if you there's like a lot of public service advertisements, public service announcements talking about how every second counts. How long was it again? You may have already said this, but can you remind me, how long was it between when the first person saw this worker having an incident and when they ultimately received care?
At least 20 minutes. So we've seen reports from workers on the ground that it might have been 20 to 30 minutes, but then we've gotten other reports that it might have been like 45 minutes to an hour. So between 20 minutes and an hour, whatever number it is between that range, it's egregious.
And so subsequent to that, he was sent home rather than to the hospital?
Yes, he was sent home, and there was no, the ambulance didn't come. There were no emergency services, nothing. Sent home, and then he died later on. Actually, we had a similar cultural, sort of like Amazon culture showing of this, that they want to avoid any kind of emergency service because I think this was 2 weeks ago. Actually, the brother of our vice president, Mary Hill, there was we have pit trucks in Amazon, so it's power industrial trucks. You can call them forklifts, I guess. And the charger of that forklift exploded at RDU1. And instead of evacuating people, they just put everybody in the break room. And the guy that was injured, I believe he had some issues with his eardrums. He was sent directly to AmCare and also was not told to go to the hospital. And we as a union have to be like, hey, like you need to advocate for yourself and you need to go to the hospital right now. At first, they didn't even want him to go to AmCare. They wanted him to go into the break room with everybody else with eardrum issues. So this is just a cultural phenomenon inside of Amazon where the safety of workers just seems to not matter. Right. And the only way to really push back is to call them out, right? We got to do it.
In that April press release, you said that Amazon had communicated nothing to RDU1 associates about their coworker's death or explained the slow response time. Is that still the case?
That's still the case, yes. We haven't heard from any RDU1 worker yet that there's been any kind of explanation.
And you've also found that a second worker died at that facility, RDU1, this one back in July. How did that happen? And how was the death kept under wraps until now? Because, I mean, it's one thing to kind of be quiet about, somebody has potentially maybe an unrelated incident to work medically, and then they go home and then they die. But having somebody physically die on the shop floor, that seems like it would be difficult to cover up, but you didn't know about this until only a few weeks ago.
Yes, definitely. So we're still trying to figure out what happened specifically on this incident, but what you said was true, that this person died on the floor. And we actually found out about it because once we started publicizing about the issues of this most recent death, people started coming up to us in the union and saying, hey, I witnessed another person die last year. So that's how we found out about it. And we don't know all of the details yet because Amazon is so good at keeping this under wraps. I think one of the veiled compliments that I will give Amazon is I always say they're the best at what they do. They're the best union busters out there. And now they're also the best at covering up deaths and injuries, right? Because they did cover this up and we're still trying to figure this out. We're in conversations right now with the North Carolina Attorney General to see if we can open up some investigations about these deaths and see if there's any more that have been covered up. And I will also say just yesterday, Jacob, we heard from a warehouse at DRT 8, which is in Durham, right down the street from the warehouse that I work in, that there was a death last year there as well. So Amazon is very good at covering up these deaths, but now that we are receiving more complaints and we're getting people to be able to voice what they saw, I think we have an opportunity here to make sure that this changes. So I do think that Amazon has gone on way too long being able to cover up these deaths, and the way that they do it is they compartmentalize everything. It's like the warehouses are laid out almost to union bust and to cover things up.
Right.
Because if you just keep the warehouses separate from each other, keep workers from talking to one another, it's easy to cover things up.
I mean, it's still so crazy. I mean, like, no, the death in July at RDU1, no report to OSHA, I guess, presumably, no news coverage. I mean, usually, you know, I mean, there's been deaths at manufacturing facilities here in our area, you know, recently and on construction sites, and it's like day of, you know, people know that somebody died, right? You know, you see the ambulances at the place and you know, people ask questions and it comes out that somebody died. And it's so crazy that people are dying in these warehouses and Amazon is able to just keep that knowledge from the public. And you know, these deaths are similar to one that happened recently in Portland that's gotten a little bit more mainstream news attention on it. For folks who may not have seen that news, can you talk to us about what happened there?
Yeah, definitely. So from what we know from reporting, that I think this worker was 46 years old, and he collapsed, died on the floor. And from the news reporting, there was a worker also that responded first, and that worker was actually CPR trained. I think they might have been they were involved in the medical field in some way, and they were also told, don't do anything, wait for a manager, wait for security, or wait for AmCare. And then when there was a corpse on the ground, Jacob, everybody was told, just go back to work, don't look. And so it was, you know, with a corpse on the ground, they're still caring about productivity and everybody needs to get back to work. It's very Amazon coded. It doesn't surprise me at all that this happened.
What is Cause, your union, what is Cause calling for in response to these deaths?
So we are calling for an immediate revocation of all policies that have to do with discouraging people to call 911, whether it's written, whether it's verbal. There should be no such policy. And then at the same time, we're calling for municipalities all over North Carolina, all 500 and something cities in North Carolina, to adopt measures that will put punitive measures against any employer that commits such egregious acts of interfering with emergency service response. So it needs to be twofold. Amazon needs to change their policies, but we also need to strengthen our laws, which are very, very possible without federal interference, without state interference. We need to locally start putting pressure on these large employers that are trying to cover up deaths and are trying to interfere with emergency response.
Cause and other Amazon workers are continuing to organize, and one South Carolina Amazon worker, South Carolina Amazon worker took a message to Bezos's penthouse. Let's play clip 1.
South Bezos, my name is Mary Hill. I am a 72-year-old warehouse worker at one of your facilities. when we struggle from paycheck to paycheck, from week to week, really angers me. Because if it weren't for every associate in every Amazon facility, he wouldn't have all those zeros behind his name. Shame on you, Jeff Bezos. The people that need to be being celebrated at the Met Gala are the workers, people like me. We deserve that celebration. We deserve so much more than we're getting. There's power in numbers, and there's more of us than there are of you. Remember, Jeff, ordinary people like myself that helped make you billionaires, if we built it, we can tear it down. Think about that tonight, okay? After that bottle of champagne when you go to bed. We're gonna keep growing, and we're gonna keep building, and we're gonna keep protesting, and we're gonna keep marching, and we're gonna keep fighting this dystopian culture. We're not stopping, we're just getting cranked up. Enjoy your damn gala.
How do you think that message went over? And actually, it's North Carolina. I'm sorry. She's in North Carolina because she's at RDU1. How did that message go over in your facility, do you think? And what's next for Amazon workers who are looking to build a union?
Oh, she's been blowing up. I remember when she went back to work on Thursday, she was saying that people were coming up to her on the warehouse, thanking her. So it's been all over the place. I think I saw on Instagram that the group Everybody Hates Elon, they got, I think, like 10 million views, I think, on that video. So it was a beautiful thing to watch. And I'll also say that Mary Hill, she's the vice president of our union. We call her Ma Mary. She's like a grandmother to everybody. I mean, this is a woman who co-founded Cause with Reverend Ryan Brown, and she's battled cancer throughout this whole time while taking on Amazon. So, I mean, she is a hero of the 21st century American labor movement. It's gone over very, very well. I was there when she filmed it. I was there when I saw the projection. It was incredibly, incredibly beautiful to watch. And like she said, if we built it, we can tear it down. And you know, we do hope that Bezos enjoyed his damn gala, as she said, because we've been organizing for the last 4 years, and now with the deaths, with this new viral video of Ma Mary, we have seen so much increase from all over the 4 warehouses in Durham that we're operating in, from RDU1, from warehouses that we don't even have a foothold in yet, of people reaching out and saying, what can we do? How can we join this union? I want to support. Like she said, we're just getting started, and I think 2026 is shaping up to be a very, very strong year for, you know, the resurrection, in a way, of the Amazon labor movement. And we are speaking with ALU, the folks at Staten Island, from people from Canada, Mexico, all over the North American continent. Ma Mary's flying out to England next month. I'm going to Italy. We're going to meet with European Amazon unions all over the world. So Amazon doesn't have any idea what's coming for them. We're a very young movement when it comes to the Amazon labor movement, and we're just starting to get our feet underneath us. So all the beautiful unions that are working to take on Amazon, we're talking to each other, we're working together, and what I can see firsthand here in North Carolina, it ain't going to be pretty for Amazon. So they better come to the table really, really quick because things are about to get heated.
Italo Medelius, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. He is the Secretary of Cause.
Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate you.
We got a bunch of other stuff to get to today. Before we do that, Adam, did you have anything?
I just wanted to say that was a fantastic report, and I am so excited about the international solidarity and the folks working together. That is really amazing. This is a big target. It is, as he put it, one of the most powerful corporate empires we've ever seen, and it's going to take a lot of coordination, a lot of collaboration, a lot of people power to take on this giant.
Workers at the Brookfield Zoo just got a tentative agreement last week. The workers will be voting on the tentative agreement soon. The Brookfield Zoo in Chicago, where they are members of the Teamsters Local 727. Let's play clip 2 from local news.
A worker strike is over at the Brookfield Zoo. The zoo says it's reached a deal with the Teamsters Union workers. It happened at 727, and that will end the 3-day strike. The proposal provides a 20% pay increase over 4 years and promises increased staffing for more than 200 workers at the zoo. Union members will vote on the agreement and return to work after it's finalized. The zoo says it's open and the animals are being cared for.
So you'll remember that the wages were stuck at like 3.5% per year. So 20% over 4 years is 5% per year, unless they front-loaded or back-loaded some of the wage increases. But 5% per year versus 3.5% is big. They also got staffing improvements, meaning more jobs. And something that they didn't mention in that clip is they got to keep their 100% employer-provided health care, which was another huge deal that they were willing and did strike over. They struck for 2 days. While they were striking, or right before it was while they were striking, the Teamsters Local 727 filed a lawsuit against the company for the Brookfield Zoo obstructing animal care during the strike. And so what had happened was that in its federal court filing, I'm reading from their press release about this, the union alleges that the Chicago Zoological Society, the owners of the Brookfield Zoo, failed to meet its contractual obligations under the essential care provisions. And among the most serious allegations, the complaint asserts that the zoo deactivated the electronic accounts and databases of animal care specialists, systems that they rely on to access and record critical information such as veterinary appointments, prescription renewals, and animal health monitoring tools used to quickly identify and address illness. The union has asked the court to intervene and grant a temporary restraining order, preliminary injunction, and permanent injunction prohibiting further breach of these essential care provisions. I mean, just a kind of a wild thing for the zoo to do during the strike, because the animal care workers did and they were granted sanction to continue to perform the essential animal care functions while the strike went on. I mean, it was important for all of the workers at the zoo to ensure that the animals were still taken care of. And so they were able to kind of come and go and make sure the animals were taken care of during the strike. And so for the zoo to come in and make their jobs more difficult during the strike it was very clear retaliation against their right to strike and an endangerment of the animals. So the Teamsters filed a lawsuit, and I think they felt pretty confident that they were going to get an injunction. And so the injunction and the strike and the public pressure all came together to force the zoo to agree to a fair contract. Which, I mean, they said that particularly on the staffing, they didn't get everything that they wanted, but it's a lot more than the previous so-called last, best, and final. You remember we talked to their general counsel, Jana, about that, about how last, best, and final is just almost always a propaganda term meant to get workers to concede, to negotiate themselves down and agree to less than they deserve. And these workers proved that, and they were able to get, a significant improvement over where things were only 7 days ago because they were willing to strike. So super exciting to be able to relay that good news. Congratulations to the Teamsters Local 727. We'll keep an eye on the ratification vote and let y'all know if the contract is ultimately ratified. And yeah, congrats. Really, really exciting story. We've got another exciting story. Longtime listeners of the program will remember us talking last year about Ellen May, a food stamps worker, a person who works at the USDA, administering the food stamps program, having been fired for giving an interview on then named MSNBC. And so I pulled the clip back up, and we're going to listen to it again. It's about 4 minutes. It's a little long, but we're going to listen to it again. And I want people to, in the chat, or you can text us or whatever, let us know, what was it that you think that the Trump administration fired her for? Because it was a very, very vanilla interview. I don't even think that she mentioned Trump or the Trump administration. She was talking about her program and how important it is to the people that they serve. And so we're going to play this clip from MSNBC. And just a reminder, they wanted to fire her for this clip. It's clip 3.
Right now, 42,000 federal workers at the USDA are in limbo, and so are the crucial programs they manage, which feed more than 41 million Americans a month. The government shutdown means half of the Agriculture Department staff is furloughed, while future funding is uncertain for critical federal assistance programs like SNAP, food stamps, and WIC, which provides food and support to mothers and babies. Joining me now, Ellen May, a furloughed federal worker and chapter president of the NTEU Chapter 255. Ellen, I want to let people know.
Just a reminder for folks, this was obviously during the first government shutdown fight, where there was, some concern about food stamps not being, the funding for food stamps not being able to be maintained. And so that's the context of this clip. It's been a minute, but that's the context of this clip. We were in the middle of a shutdown fight.
Representing your employer here, you're here speaking for yourself. Just how are you doing? How are your coworkers feeling?
Yeah. Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for having me here. Yeah, my coworkers and I are feeling really conflicted in this moment. So many of us have been overworked and exhausted since April, when we lost half of the staff in our office. And so we feel even guilty for seeing this as a reprieve, because what we really want to do is to be at work, helping the people who rely on SNAP and WIC to feed their families and to put food on their tables. We're feeling angry at being treated as political pawns again, so that billionaires can have more money, while the people that we serve are being, strained even further and having to worry again about their benefits being at play. And we're also just anxious because we're hearing about the RIF potentials and office closures that are looming over USDA as this shutdown kind of drags on.
So have you gotten any clarity, any reassurance about the security of your job?
No, since we logged off yesterday after about 10 a.m., we haven't heard anything. Since we're not allowed to touch our government furnished devices after a shutdown, we've just been waiting to see how this all unfolds, just like everybody else.
Do you have any sense about the food assistance programs that you work on? Any idea how long their funding might last?
Yeah, so for SNAP at least, we think that they will be okay for the month of October. October benefits have already started going out in some states. Some states send them out on the first of the month. We expect that all of the states will be able to issue SNAP benefits for the month of October, but things might get a little dicey if this drags on into November or even past that. And for programs like WIC, it's looking a lot more uncertain. It's possible that they have funding for 3 days, maybe 1 week. Of course, we hope for longer. And we have other programs too. We have programs that get food packages to seniors and people living on tribal lands. We also have programs that get farm fresh produce into schools, and we don't know about the funding for those programs right now while we're in the middle of the shutdown.
I want to play for you, if I can, what we heard from one woman. Now, she works at a food bank now, but she used to be a recipient of food assistance herself. Take a listen.
When I was on it, I look forward for it every month. I mean, you're going to see kids out here, they're going to be hungry, they're going to be starving, they're going to be trying to steal out of grocery stores. It's going to be really hard. I mean, it's going to be a big struggle.
Tell us what you know. What do you think will happen to the people who your program supports if funding runs out?
Yeah, we think that they'll have to turn to the food banks and to their friends and family to try to help them get more support. Food banks are already really strained right now, and we support them too in the course of our job. So we are concerned that the food banks will have enough food to feed all the people that might be turning to them for assistance. We have concerns that sometimes if the food banks are getting food trucks with food that's been transported in unsafe conditions, that they won't know what to do with all of that food. They won't know whether to accept it to feed the hungry people, or we don't know if they'll have to reject it and people will have to go hungry because the government is unable to care for all Americans right now, not just the richest ones.
Ellen May, I can't imagine being in your shoes or your colleagues, and the work you do is something that we should be proud of, and I'm sorry you're going through this. Keep in touch. Will you let us know how it's going?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Chris, for having us on here, and I'll definitely keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Ellen, thank you.
So that was the terrible, awful interview that she gave that the Trump administration thought was so insulting that they wanted to fire her for it. Again, did not name the Trump administration, did not say vote for Democrats or vote for Republicans or anything violative of the Hatch Act. Spoke to her experience as a worker and her concern for people that she serves, and the Trump administration wanted to fire her for that. I mean, totally, obviously a violation of the First Amendment, et cetera, et cetera. And so the Federal Unionists Network last week announced that thanks to the outpouring and solidarity from all across the network and the federal unions, they have backed off of their threat, management has, to fire Ellen May. She has been reinstated. She is now back on the job. And so super, super exciting. There does remain more to be won, they said. Ellen still received a suspension for one pay period, but her and her coworkers are emboldened by management's retreat, and the organizing continues. Ellen is quoted as saying, "While a 14-day suspension is still punishment, I am proud to rejoin the fight inside the workplace and with my FNS colleagues and union siblings, from stopping the USDA reorganization to navigating the devastating SNAP cuts passed from H.R. 1. We've got work to do." Really exciting stuff, and just another reminder of why federal workers, even if their collective bargaining agreements are ripped up, even if management does not recognize your unions, you still need to be a member, you still need to pay your dues, and you still need to participate, because unions can still get your jobs back. Unions got her job back. And so you should continue to participate in your union. Otherwise, folks like her are going to be left out on the vine. Folks like you are going to be left out on the vine if your unions die. Additionally, this came in also just last week. FEMA is reversing the firings of 14 signatories to the Katrina Declaration from last year, where workers at FEMA expressed real concerns with the way that FEMA was being run. State Representative or Congressional Representative Ayanna Pressley, who is the representative of Ellen May. Ellen May is in Ayanna Pressley's district, put out a statement congratulating her for being reinstated, saying that she is also going to be continuing to fight against her suspension being left on her record and her not getting back pay for that week. But she's glad that this has happened, and, quote, "I'll keep pushing to hold this lawless White House accountable, to support our labor unions, and for all of our dedicated federal workers to be met with the dignity and respect they deserve." Really, another great story. Really excited to be able to bring it to you. Speaking of, stories of victory, workers in Colorado went on strike about a month ago, and they came back with a tentative agreement. Adam, can you talk to us about what those workers were able to win at JBS?
Sure, yeah. I want to point to a recent article in Labor Notes. Well, it's a couple weeks old now, like you said, but We wanted to make sure we talked about this because it was a big win. Caitlin and Lisa over at Labor Notes put out, after 3-week strike, JBS concedes to meatpacking workers. So definitely check out the full article. We'll hit some highlights here. So there were 3,800 workers involved here in UFCW Local 7 in Greeley, Colorado. And it was the first major strike in the meatpacking industry in 40 years. It was the first at JBS Greeley's beef packing plant, and that is one of the largest in the company. There were ULP charges against JBS that included the illegal termination of a member of the bargaining committee, as well as surveillance and intimidation of workers for participation in union activity. So yeah, the strike was about 3 weeks. It was an unfair labor practice strike. And worth noting, and they mentioned this in the intro to the Labor Notes article, there are 57 languages spoken under one roof. So it's a, predominantly immigrant workforce, people from a lot of different cultures and backgrounds. And this is one of the biggest meat packing companies in the world. So very important struggle here, and it's really cool that they were able to pull off some wins. And some of those wins include $1.50 an hour in wage increases, and this is a 2-year agreement. So they also had some big wins when it comes to PPE, personal protective equipment, because JBS had this system where they would garnish people's wages. If your equipment was damaged or lost, stolen, whatever, you had folks paying up to $1,000 or more for things you had to have for work, right? Gloves and knife sharpeners, equipment like that. And so Labor Notes talked to some of the workers there and talked about some of the issues that they had dealt with. One fellow talked about his equipment being stolen and then having to pay hundreds of dollars to the company. It's just absolutely ridiculous, and reminds me of some of the stuff we were just talking to Amazon about. So many of these companies are really carrying out practices that you thought only existed in the history books. What we heard from Amazon earlier reminded me of the textile mills. But yeah, so, these folks were having to pay out of pocket for these PPE expenses. That was something they were able to address in this agreement. And, it was really a big deal because the meatpacking industry, talk about essential workers, right? This is, a critical industry, huge leverage here that these workers have. But definitely a difficult task when you're talking about over 50 languages involved. So what they did building up to the strike was they built out their structures. They had 90 picket captains. They had union reps. They had walking stewards who were shop stewards who were paid full time to carry out their steward duties. They used all sorts of communication, text, email, social media, which they had to translate into multiple languages to try to keep members informed. And, they have, of course, had a lot of pre-strike meetings to get people engaged and educated. So there was, a lot of work to go into this strike. Labor Notes reports that the picket line was filled with joyful chanting, singing, and dancing to music from around the world. UFCW members from all over the country came out to support them. Of course, other labor folks in the community came out to support as well. And it was a tough battle because it was not necessarily the most optimal time to strike in beef processing, according to some of the industry insiders. But they were able to pull it off, and it was really a testament to the power of solidarity and the power of workers coming together. So the strike ultimately secured a 2-year agreement. It's interesting. Meat packing is such a difficult job, and it's a tough job that a lot of folks would never want to do. But there's nothing written in stone saying that it has to be a bad job, that it has to have bad pay or bad benefits. It is an essential job. So many of us rely on these workers and what they do day in and day out. So I really want to celebrate them for standing together, for being willing to go on strike, just like those workers at the zoo that we just mentioned. It took going on strike. It took taking collective action to bring the company to the table for a fair, decent agreement. And sometimes that's what it takes. Most people don't want to go on strike. It's not an easy decision. It's a lot of work, a lot of stress, a lot of hardship. But we can shut it down. And when we do that, we have some leverage, and sometimes we can really win. So big win out in Colorado. I recommend you check out the full article from Labor Notes because they also go into some of the broader issues in the industry, including deregulation by the USDA, which is going to increase the line speeds in pork and poultry processing. Local 7 out there in Colorado is calling on state lawmakers to pass a law requiring meatpacking employers to guarantee reasonable bathroom breaks. Because workers out at the Greeley plant have said bathroom breaks have always been a big issue. So they're organizing not just in the workplace, but also in the community, in the legislative arena, which is really important. And that's something else we heard from our brother from Amazon earlier this morning. Big win. Check out the Labor Notes article. But really powerful to see such a diverse group of workers being able to unite, come together, stand strong together, and take on what is a really powerful company.
Adam, while we're with you, last week was also Teacher Appreciation Week. We talked to a North Carolina educator about some of the things that their union is doing. You had a couple of things you wanted to say about Teacher Appreciation Week.
Absolutely. I want to make sure I express my appreciation to teachers and education employees everywhere. This past week was the official Appreciation Week, and some schools do a better job than others. A lot of times, teachers and other education employees will get sweet notes from students and parents, or maybe even get a nice breakfast or duty-free lunch or something like that. But I also want to remind folks that if you truly appreciate educators, it will be reflected in your budgets and your policies. And, we all know that companies love to throw a pizza party as a way of convincing you that we're all family. You don't need a union here. And schools act very similarly. I went to college to be a high school history teacher. That's what I set out to be. Never expected to get into activism and organizing, really. But it just sort of happened. And I want to really just shout out all the educators I've had the opportunity to work with throughout my career, both as an educator myself and then as an advocate for educators. Many hardworking folks who do so much above and beyond what's in the contract or the policy. Folks who give their own money to feed their students, to provide a good learning experience for their students, spending time away from their own families and own children to take care of these kids. It's often undernoticed what educators do and what they go through to try to make a difference in the lives of young people, and their work is so important. And I'm really glad we had the Durham educators on this morning because it's an inspiration to hear about that kind of work. And I encourage education folks all over to get involved and get engaged and build power together, because public education is under attack. That's not new. There have always been rolling waves of attacks on public education. When I got into the game, it was kind of a era of like neoliberal corporate reform. Charter schools and vouchers were a threat. It was the aftermath of the Great Recession, so a lot of deep budget cuts and austerity measures. But you also had a lot of corporate Democrats supporting these kind of reforms, and it impacted the curriculum. It impacted what was being taught day to day, where you had the influence of big tech, the influence of standardized testing, all of that. So these things continue and evolve. We've seen attacks on honest and inclusive curriculum, here recently, and right now we're dealing with that. We're seeing billionaires really trying to influence education and undermine public schools. Public schools are not perfect. Certainly here in the South, we know they have historically been underinvested in. They have been sabotaged in many respects. And, your outputs are only as good as your inputs. And when the living conditions and quality of life for people in the South is so terrible, we can't expect public schools alone to fix that and undo the inequality so present in our society. But I don't want to leave you without anything to do, because there are real opportunities to organize. And like we heard from Durham earlier, when you build power together as parents, educators, students, and community members, really united around providing an excellent public education for everybody, for every child, for every student, there's real power in that, because most people really do want that. Most people recognize the importance of providing a good education, a holistic, well-rounded education that's fair and equitable to every kid. It's critical, right, to supporting not just the strength of our communities and our future generations, but our democracy. So the last thing I'll say on this topic is that I'm really excited to have learned more about Public School Strong, and recommend folks check that out. You can go to publicschoolstrong.org. They are having their next national organizing meeting on Tuesday, May 12th. It's going to be 6 to 7:30 p.m. Central. You can find it on Mobilize, or again, go to publicschoolstrong.org. But they have these national organizing meetings on a regular basis every month. It's a place where parents and family members, educators, and supporters across the nation can gather together, gain some practical tools to promote, protect, and strengthen our public schools. This month, they're going to be, in particular, focusing on the attempts to defund our schools while whitewashing our history, taking over the public school curriculum, and inserting Christian nationalist groups into the public education system. So you're going to learn a little bit about who those actors are and what you can do to stand up against them. It's a great campaign. It actually started in North Carolina, so we're having a heavy North Carolina theme today. But Public School Strong has been very effective in places like North Carolina, Tennessee, and beyond, not just in the South, as a way for, like I said, rank and file educators alongside the parents and community and students to really organize together at the local level, at your local school board, at your local school budget hearings, but to connect those issues and those struggles from school district to school district and build power at the state level as well. So yeah, check that out. It is 6 to 7:30 p.m. Central on Tuesday, May 12th. I would love to see some of y'all there, some friendly faces. Check it out. Get plugged into Public School Strong. You'll hear more from me about that later, as the summer, so we get into summer break and prepare for back to school season. But wanted to make sure I lift that up and say thank you to all the educators who have poured into me. Really appreciate you and, the difference you made in my life. And special appreciation to my favorite teacher, my wife, Maggie, who does really amazing things in the classroom every day in a very tough rural environment against the odds. She's doing great work.
We got one more segment that I wanted to get to before we wrapped here. Yeah, we can go ahead and do this. So, Zoran Mamdani won the mayoral election in New York City, and he won the election in part on a commitment to tax the rich, and they have begun doing that, and we'll talk about the specific policy that people are upset about right now. But rich people are obviously reacting to this, and here is how hedge fund CEO Ken Griffin reacted to one of the policies that Zoran Mamdani is implementing. Let's play clip 4.
What will you do in New York? You are planning a $6 billion office building at 350 Park.
So, I said earlier that Americans are triggered by inflationary signs like higher gas prices. I think for myself, looking at what Mamdani just did to me, and more broadly is doing in the city of New York, is triggering of the trauma I went through in Chicago.
Triggering! He's triggered by what Mamdani is doing to him. So, Adam, you're not as online, so you're probably not familiar with the specific policy. I mean, if something is triggering to somebody as powerful as him, it's got to be something like really big, you would think. Do you have any guesses as to what policy Zoran Mamdani is implementing that has triggered hedge fund CEO Ken Griffin?
Yeah, I couldn't imagine what could trigger that trauma. I mean, trauma is a serious word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I would have heard about it if it was something super traumatic, like if he's gonna take all their stuff away. But yeah, what's he doing? What's he proposing here?
Let's play clip 5.
When I ran for mayor, I said I was going to tax the rich. Well, today, we're taxing the rich. I'm thrilled to announce we've secured a pied-à-terre tax, the first in New York's history. This is an annual fee on luxury properties worth more than $5 million, whose owners do not live full-time in the city. Like for this penthouse, which hedge fund CEO Ken Griffin bought for $238 million. This pied-à-terre tax is specifically designed for the richest of the rich, those who store their wealth in New York City real estate, but who don't actually live here. But even so, they're able to reap the huge financial rewards of owning property in, dare I say, the greatest city in the world. And most of the time, these units are sitting empty, since again, they don't actually live here. This is a fundamentally unfair system that hurts working New Yorkers. Now, it's coming to an end. This tax will raise at least $500 million directly for the city. It'll help fund things like free childcare, cleaner streets, and safer neighborhoods. As mayor, I believe everyone has a role to play in contributing to our city, and some a little bit more than others. Happy Tax Day, New York.
So it is an annual surcharge on homes over $5 million that the owner doesn't live in. And so maybe, so do you have any guess as to how much the annual surcharge is? I mean, it must be a lot because he's triggered, he's got trauma.
Yeah, I mean, he said he's going to raise $500 million for the city, which is pretty significant. I don't know. Was it like a 30%?
You would be wrong. It is tiered, but from $5 to $6 million, it is a 0.5% tax, and up to a 4% property tax.
Wow. Traumatic.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty rough. So you
have to bring out the decimal point. It's like,
it's
really,
kinda,
bro, that's triggering.
And
you?
again, the way that he could get around this is by living in New York City. Right? If he didn't have if he lived in New York City, then he wouldn't have that tax because it's only on homes that are over $5 million where the owner does not live in New York. And also, by the way, that $238 million penthouse is, I think, I read that is the single most expensive piece of private residential property in the country.
So, boo-hoo. Boo-hoo.
Yeah, so I mean, he's having a tough time, so we gotta
Wow. It's a good thing
make
they
space.
don't know what we would really like to do.
All right, well, I think that's it for the show today. Adam, you have anything else before we wrap?
No, just keep calling, keep letting us know what's going on. I enjoyed the call from Heartland Teamster earlier. Some words of inspiration. Let us know what's happening in your neck of the woods. Give us a voicemail throughout the week. We'd love to hear some updates. So we talked a lot about North Carolina today. So everybody else, we got 49 other states. We got the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Guam. Y'all call in. Let us know what's happening in organized labor and with working class organizing. And yeah, as well as tenant union organizing, any kind of building of people power, that's up our alley. We'd love to hear about it. So definitely give us a call throughout the week. And yeah, appreciate everyone staying tuned. Appreciate everyone supporting the project. Please do continue to like and share and subscribe and donate. It makes a huge difference. Appreciate all the support. Solidarity forever, y'all.
We'll see you next week.